Ladies and gentlemen, in today's video we're going to go through and rank every single defender and goalkeeper that's played for Bradford City under Graham Alexander from worst to best. If you do go on to enjoy today's video, please make sure to drop a like on there for me and subscribe to the channel as well. If you are new, can we try and hit 200 likes on today's video? And don't forget to get your thoughts in down in the comment section down below. Let me know down below, do you agree or disagree with my ratings? We've got 5 categories to go through and put, I think, 26 different players in today's video in, so let's waste no further time and get straight into it. So we don't have any names for today's categories, we've just got S at the top all the way down to D at the bottom. And as you can see, this is every single defender and goalkeeper. Just to kind of balance things out, I had to put goalkeepers in with defenders, and then more of the real attacking minded wing backs that can also be classed as wingers, I've put them in the midfielders category, and then some of the more natural wingers, I've put them in the forwards category. We're going to go through and do this for the 3 different positions that are on the football pitch, with obviously including goalkeepers into the defenders category. We're going to go through it in a completely random order, and we're only going to factor in their time at Bradford City under Graham Alexander. We'll start out firstly then with Colin Doyle, who was in his final playing year at the football club when Graham Alexander did come in. Played a couple of times in the AFL Trophy under Alexander and did okay. I remember Derby County away when we won 1-0 back in January 2024. I think that was actually the final inclusion in the matchday squad for Harry Lewis as well. But Colin Doyle, we know he was around 40 at the time. He was our backup goalkeeper. He was the goalkeeping coach. He was steady enough, did a job, but certainly not to the same level that he was in his first spell at the football club. We're sticking with the goalkeepers. We'll go to Harry Lewis next, who I think I'm also going to put in the same category. Now, obviously, the previous season under Mark Hughes, Harry Lewis was fantastic, but Lewis came back the next season and had a really big dip in form, was part of the reason in the end why Mark Hughes did lose his job as Bradford City manager. We all remember that night against Tranmere where Harry Lewis let in an absolute stinker, but did also save a penalty. But then when you think about Lewis's time under Graham Alexander, he only really had him for 2 months or so before he moved on to Carlisle. But I remember in particular that Good Friday game away at Doncaster where Lewis made a massive mistake for that goal, and for me he was a little bit underwhelming, so that's why I'm going to stick him in the C category. Joe Hilton only really had a handful of games under Graham Alexander, but was really poor in a lot of those. I remember in particular, again, Doncaster away does feature in this one in the AFL Trophy earlier on last season, where he conceded 3 goals and on the whole was really poor. I know it's cut half his face off there, but he never really did compete with Sam Walker. We have obviously recently signed John McCracken, and it's a bit hard to kind of put a player in a category when you've not really seen them play too much. I've only really seen 45 minutes of John McCracken in a pre-season friendly against Halifax Town, but you like to hope that he's going to be a good signing. I'll stick him in the B category for now. Sticking with the goalkeepers then, finally we do have Sam Walker, who's had quite a long time at Bradford City. All that time has been under Graham Alexander. He did come in as the replacement for Harry Lewis, and I thought in the second half of that 2023-24 campaign he was okay, steady away, nothing really too stand out in a lot of those games, but also not really much in terms of errors. Then obviously we have the season where Bradford City get promoted, where I thought he started out a little bit poor, but certainly massively kicked on in the second half of that season, was a big reason as to why we did go on and get promoted. Saved a couple of penalties. I think Sam Walker's best moment in a Bradford City shirt was that penalty save at home to Crewe at Alexandra. Absolutely fantastic save. But obviously we saw last season where he made that brilliant save away at Stockport, but then really did tail off. Got beat from inside the opposition's half by Reyes Cleary. It was an absolutely incredible goal, but Walker should have done better with that. And then following that, there was a fair few goals where Sam Walker should have done a lot better with, and obviously McCracken has probably come in to replace him coming into this season. But I think overall it's certainly fair to stick Sam Walker in that B category. I think when you factor in his mistakes, that is why he can't really be in the A category, but I certainly think he's probably at the top end of B for what he's done under Graham Alexander so far. Moving on then into the defenders, ranging from players like Liam Rydalge, Ash Taylor to the likes of Curtis Till and Macaulay Gillespie. We'll go firstly though to Brad Halliday, who personally I thought was a fantastic servant to Bradford City, and I'm actually going to stick him in that top category. From what you expect of a Bradford City type of player, Brad Halliday was that in an absolute abundance, always gave 110% and will always be welcome back at Valley Parade. That 23-24 campaign, he was absolutely fantastic, comfortably the best right back, right wing back in the entire division that season, was included in the PFA League 2 Team of the Season for a reason. He was fantastic. Even last season he got displaced a couple of times, the promotion season, by Jay Ben and Callum Johnston, and obviously eventually worked his way back into the side. And anytime that Halliday maybe has been replaced even by Oyegoke in the season prior to that, Halliday's always worked his way back into the side. Did a good job for us as well in League 1 before he moved on up to Scotland in January, but really happy and pleased with what I saw from Brad Halliday, and thoroughly deserves his inclusion in the S tier. Speaking of Jay Ben, I have completely forgotten him off of this list, but I'd probably stick him in the C category. He was okay, nothing really too stand out. He had a couple of good moments early on, but didn't really play at all in the second half of that promotion season. So Jay Ben, I know there's no picture of him, but he's in the C category. Next we'll go over to Romany Critchlow. Obviously he came in the second half of our promotion season, was only with us for about 6 months or so in that spell. In my personal opinion, wasn't quite as good in that spell as what he was in his first spell. I think the Mark Hughes 4-2-3-1 system certainly suited Critchlow a lot more than an Alexander 3-4-3 system, and I think that was clear for all to see. Critchlow, even though he had the odd mistake, I can't quite remember which game it was. There was one game though, it could have been Colchester at home. There was certainly one game where he got caught out and we did concede a goal because of him, but I still think on the whole he was really solid. Scored a goal as well. I'm happy to put Critchlow in that B category. If it was his first spell, probably stick him in A, but second spell, I'm going to put him in that B category. I'm also going to stick Jonathan Tompkinson in the same category. Was a good player for Bradford City. Obviously he was part of that 23-24 season where Alexander came in kind of a third of the way through that season, but Tompkinson was certainly well liked by the Bradford City fans. Wasn't an elite level defender by any stretch of the imagination, but was certainly steady enough away, decent on the ball. Defensively, there were certainly questions to be asked, and you look at where he's gone in his career since leaving Bradford City, hasn't really kicked on, but I'm happy to put Tompkinson in that B category. I'm just going to quickly sneak Jay Ben into that C category. There we go, he is now added in. Next we're going to go to Paul Huntington, who I think I'm going to put in the A category. Came in to do a job and certainly did do that job. Was very good for Bradford City in the season that we got promoted. Obviously his final ever appearance as a professional was that goal, and that game against Fleetwood Tower, Bradford City did achieve promotion. I think Huntington, you can clearly tell, was a great character in the dressing room, but there was very little times where you thought he's not particularly had a great game. Was always a solid 7 or 8 out of 10. Was very reliable when you're coming up against the big physical strikers, when you're going away to a Bromley on a Tuesday night and playing against the Michael Cheek, when you're going away to a Port Vale on a Tuesday night and you're coming up against a Jayden Stockley. Huntington was very important in our promotion, especially in the final few weeks and months of the season. It was very much, if you win in with 15 minutes to go, you throw Paul Huntington on, and I know in the final couple of games we were throwing a fair few leads away, but I thought Huntington was very reliable, and for what we expected of him when he came in when we had a massive injury crisis, I thought he certainly did play his part, and for me belongs in that A category. Next we're going to go to Ash Taylor. I think the less said about him the better. Just a signing that simply did not work out. Was brought in to play a possession based style under Mark Hughes, and I think in terms of technical ability was probably one of the worst footballers that I've ever seen play for Bradford City. Was incredibly slow, out of position a lot, got sent off away at Forest Green when we were 3-0 up. Just unfortunately for him, nowhere near the standard of what we expect as a Bradford City player, and I think the less said about Ash Taylor the better, to be honest. Macaulay Gillespie is another new signing for Bradford City, so similar to John McCracken, we're going to stick him in that B category. He's had a couple of pre-season games, but nothing that we can really say too much about with Gillespie, but I do think he will go on and prove to be a decent signing. Next we're going to go to Matty Platt, who I thought probably belongs in that A category as well. Obviously was only with Bradford City under Graham Alexander for about 8 months or so in that 23-24 campaign. He eventually moved on at the end of that season and joined Notts County. Obviously since then they achieved promotion, but I'm pretty sure he's currently recovering from an ACL injury. And I thought Matty Platt was always a very solid, reliable defender. On the ball, maybe at times left a little bit to be desired, but I always thought he was pretty consistent in a Bradford City shirt, and at the time I really would have liked to have seen him stay. Obviously he might look back and potentially regret that, considering where the two clubs are now, but I'm sure he's not going to be too short of opportunities next season at Notts County, because their recruitment so far certainly does seem pretty interesting. But I thought Matty Platt was a solid enough defender for Bradford City. Next we're going to go to Ibu Toure, and I think I'm also going to stick Toure in that top category. When you're comparing him to a lot of the other players on this list, I think Toure, you can count on one hand how many times he's really let down Bradford City or been at fault for a goal. Very reliable as a left centre-back, as a left wing-back, as a left-back, very versatile down that left-hand side defensively, and while he lacks a little bit going forward at times, and he's not the trickiest of players, he's not the quickest of players, I think he's always very reliable, very dependable, contributed to us finishing in the playoffs in League One in our first season back in England's third division. And if we're having Brad Halliday in there for slightly different reasons, I think in terms of ability and standards, all that sort of stuff, and how many games he played as well, Ibou Toure certainly deserves to be in that S category. Callum Johnson is a bit of a weird one because we knew about the ability of Johnston, but unfortunately injuries were a little bit of a problem for him throughout his time with Bradford City. He obviously went to Gateshead, I think, after Bradford City got promoted, and was only there for a couple of months before obviously retiring. I think he's now doing some professional coaching as well, but unfortunately injuries just did ruin his career a little bit. I certainly think when he played for Bradford City he was quite strong and did a job, but unfortunately didn't really get that much game time because of those injuries, or also selection as well. He was behind Brad Halliday, who was a great player in that promotion season for Bradford City. So I think Johnston, I'll stick him again in the middle of the pack. Kieran Kelly, again, another very interesting one here with Kieran Kelly, because he was okay at times in League 2. Obviously that injury away at Walsall, where I think he fractured his foot or his ankle. After that he never really got back to the same level of form that he potentially showed in the second half of the 23-24 campaign and the first couple of weeks of that promotion season for Bradford City. But I would say on the whole I'll put Kieran Kelly in the C category. It might be a little bit harsh, but when I think about the quality of Kelly and what I expect of him, I just think he under-delivered a little bit, especially in League 1. He looked a little bit lost at times. He was a little bit clumsy as well, so I'll put Kelly in the C category. Don't forget, if you are enjoying today's video, to like, comment and subscribe. Next up we go to Matt Pennington, who I think I'm going to stick in that A category. Very reliable, very dependable, very solid in League 1 for Bradford City last campaign. Again, not the most technical footballer in the world, but certainly a solid, consistent player for Bradford City. Similar to Ibou Toure, you can probably count on one hand how many times he really did let us down. And I think, again, not the most technical of footballers that we've ever seen, but very committed. Just everything that you really want to see in a Bradford City defender. I quite like Matt Pennington. I think he's very underrated at Bradford City. I think he probably deserves a bit more of a shot in the first team consistently next season. Obviously, towards the back end of last campaign, he was really struggling to get into the side, but Pennington always been very consistent, dependable, reliable. I'm sticking him in that A category. Next, we're going to go to Liam Ridehalgh, who I think, unfortunately, for his time under Graham Alexander, probably deserves to be in that D category. You could see that after he left Bradford City at the end of that 23-24 campaign, and he drops all the way down to Guiseley, who was step 3 or step 4 non-league. And there was a fair few times in the second half of that season where he was getting subbed off after 20 minutes. We were changing the formation. He was just all over the place. And I think in Ridehalgh's first season at Bradford City under Derek Adams, he was actually one of our better performers that campaign. But as time went on, he was just making more and more errors and was just physically nowhere near the level. Technically, he started a little bit about him, but in terms of physicality and pace and being caught out of position and all that sort of stuff, he was absolutely miles off it in that season in particular. Under Graham Alexander, for me, he's going in that D category. Next, we're going to go to Aidan Baldwin, who for me probably has an argument to be Bradford City's best defender under Graham Alexander. Obviously, the season we get promoted, he plays a massive part in that, barring the odd injury that he did have in that season, but was very strong for us. But I think in particular last season, he massively stepped up in League One. When you think he missed the final game of the promotion season and the first game of our season in League One because of that incident away at Doncaster, and pretty much every fan at that point where Baldwin got sent off for the most stupid red card you've ever seen would have said, oh, terminate his contract. You can't have people like that in the dressing room and around the club, all that sort of stuff. But his redemption at last season, he was one of the best defenders in League One. His ability on the ball is absolutely outstanding. Those diagonal passes are fantastic, but also defensively, he's an absolute monster. He's not the tallest, he's not the most physical of centre-halves, but he certainly gives it a fair whack, and I think he did a really good job, in particular last season for Bradford City, and certainly deserves to be in that S category. Next, we're going to go to Sam Stubbs, who I think for his time under Graham Alexander, I'll probably stick him in the C category. Under Mark Hughes, he was pretty strong, to be fair. I know that there was the odd game where Alexander used Sam Stubbs as a holding midfielder when obviously Richie Smould was suspended. I think it was in our 1-0 win at home to Sutton where Stubbs played as a holding midfielder. But he was okay, nothing special, lacked a little bit of pace and technical ability really to be any higher on there, but he was okay at absolute best with Sam Stubbs under Alexander for me. Tom McIntyre, I think I'm also going to stick in that A category. For whatever reason, didn't really play that much for Bradford City last season, was only with us for a couple of months on loan in the first half of the season, and for, like I say, whatever reason, just didn't really get much game time, especially when you factor in Curtis Tilt's long-term injury. McIntyre just didn't really get much of a kick, but I thought when he did play, he was quite a strong player. I know recently he's been on trial at Blackpool and that's now ended and he's still looking for a club, but I think McIntyre is a decent League One defender. He's really struggled to find himself a home since obviously leaving Reading a couple of seasons ago, but I always thought he was pretty reliable when he did play for Bradford City. Next we'll go to Lewis Richards, who in that period, sort of December to February sort of time, in that season where we got promoted, he was absolutely outstanding. Probably one of the best, if not the best, wing-backs in the entire division in League Two. But injuries were a massive problem for Lewis Richards throughout his time at Bradford City, whether it was shoulder or hamstring. He just could not catch a break. I'm not too sure how he's got on at Crawley since joining them in January, but under Alexander, he had that incredible period, which you could maybe argue deserves to be in the A category for, but the amount of injuries that he had was so disappointing, so frustrating. And I remember in particular, in that second half of the 23-24 campaign, he struggled a little bit with fitness and his body shape and all that sort of stuff. To be fair, he came back massively better ahead of our season in League One, but I don't think played a single second of League One football. So I'm going to stick him in the B category. In terms of ability, it deserves to be higher, but unfortunately, because of injuries, he just struggled to really stay fit. Next, we'll go to Curtis Tilt, who I think I'm going to put in that A category. Probably, again, right at the top end of A. Came in, did a job for a year at Bradford City, and obviously has now since moved on to Burton Albion. I wish him all the very best there, but defensively, very strong, absolute monster, and clearly a fan favourite. But towards the later stages of last season, in particular in the playoffs, I think he got found out as not quite being at that level to be a top-end League One football. And I think in terms of technical ability, he was a little bit short of what we were looking for. That's what Macaulay Gillespie has come in to replace. Again, obviously Gillespie at the moment is lower because he's only played a couple of pre-season games, but I would expect him to be potentially in that top category after we've seen him a little bit more under Alexander. But in terms of Till, certainly overachieved a lot of people's expectations from what we thought when we originally signed Till. He has obviously now moved back closer to home, but did a really good job and was a good servant for Bradford City, so I wish him nothing but the best at Burton. 4 players left to go then. Next we're going to go to Daniel Oyegoke, and now this might be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to stick him in the A category. When he was playing as a right wing back under Mark Hughes, he looked absolutely miles off it, but playing as a right-sided centre-back under Graham Alexander, he was actually quite good in the second half of that 23-24 campaign and did a pretty solid job there. I think he certainly got the attributes to play right centre-back in a Graham Alexander type of team. Again, under Mark Hughes as a right wing-back, he was absolutely shocking and was caught out of position quite a lot, didn't really offer loads going forward. I know since then he's been playing in the Serie A, and I think he's now at Hearts as well, potentially, but I actually thought, specifically under Alexander, Oyegoke did quite a good job as a right centre-back. Neil Byrne is next up. I'm probably going to stick him in the middle category. Was okay in League 2. League 1 was a little bit off the pace, if we are completely honest, and there's a fair few times where the fans made that known towards Neil Byrne. I remember Rotherham away, and in particular Mansfield away, where the fans were not happy that Neil Byrne was playing, and they were sarcastically singing his name and all that sort of stuff. We were 3-0 down, getting absolutely battered, but Byrne was okay, certainly played his part in our promotion and will be forever remembered for challenging for that original header, which did then fall to George Lapsley to strike towards goal. But Neil Byrne was okay. It would feel a little bit harsh having him a little bit any lower than that. 2 players left to go then. Firstly, we're going to go to Jack Shepherd, and I'm going to stick him in the A category. I thought in the first half of that promotion season was okay, pretty strong, but in the second half of the season I thought he did massively kick on. If he had got recalled in January, I wouldn't have really been too disappointed, but in particular in the second half of that promotion season really did prove how good that he was. And obviously last season at Barnsley really did not work out for him, and there could be a possibility of us trying to up signing him again in this summer transfer window. But Jack Shepherd, for what he contributed, fair few goals in there. I remember his goal in particular at home to Gillingham. That was absolutely incredible strike for a centre-half on the volley, outside the penalty area. Fantastic goal, and for me personally, deserves to be in that A category. And then finally, that leaves us with Joe Wright, and I'm probably going to stick him also in that A category. Again, contributed to Bradford City finishing 4th in League One for our first season back in there. Technically on the ball, again, not great whatsoever, similar to Curtis Till and Ash Taylor, those type of players. But I do think defensively he is quite strong for League One level. Certainly contributed his fair share in terms of goals last season as well. I think all 3 of them at Valley Parade at last campaign, including a last minute winner at home to 9-man at Wigan Athletic. But I quite like Joe Wright. I think he's certainly got a part for Bradford City to play next season, and that is my complete assessment of every defender that has played and goalkeeper under Graham Alexander for Bradford City. The best 3 in my opinion are Brad Halliday, Ibu Toure and Aidan Baldwin. If I was to rank them 3, I'd probably stick Baldwin as number 1, probably Halliday as 2 and Toure as 3. Obviously you don't really want to be in the D category, but we've probably fairly ranked them, I would say. Let me know down below if you disagree or what you would change and all that sort of stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well if you have enjoyed. 200 likes would be massively appreciated. We'll have midfielders and strikers or forwards still to come as well. Thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon for another one.